People will not understand your journey. They are not supposed to. Your path is your own. You may be mocked, misunderstood, even ignored. But the Stoic never flinches. Epictetus, born a slave, crippled, with no wealth and no status, said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And so he built a philosophy not based on what others gave him, but on what he gave to himself. Discipline, control, self-respect. He didn't cry for attention. He focused on mastery of his thoughts, of his choices, of his life. They won't care. They won't notice your early mornings, your late nights, your sacrifices, your discipline, your hunger for growth. They won't care that you're trying to become better, that you're pushing against everything you were taught to accept, that you're breaking the cycle of mediocrity, that you're wrestling your own weaknesses behind closed doors. They won't know about your battles, your quiet sufferings, your small victories that feel monumental to you but invisible to them. And you must learn to be okay with that. That's the first step to freedom. The idea that nobody cares is not something to mourn. It is something to embrace. Because when you stop expecting others to care, you start doing things for the right reasons. You stop living to be seen and start living to become. That's where the power lies. In not needing the applause, in not seeking the validation, in not requiring anyone to pat you on the back every time you take a small step forward. The Stoics lived by this. They did not depend on crowds or recognition. They focused entirely on the one thing they could control, themselves. Their thoughts, their reactions, their character, their action. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world at his time, wrote privately in his meditations about how fleeting fame is, how small the opinions of others are when measured against eternity. If a Roman emperor, surrounded by wealth and power, could remain focused inward, what excuse do the rest of us have? He knew the truth, that external praise is fragile, that fame is fickle, that opinions are cheap, and that a man's true worth comes not from the echo of applause, but from the depth of his character. People will talk when you fail, and they will talk when you succeed. They will gossip either way. They will twist your story to fit their narrative. They will overlook your effort and exaggerate your mistakes. And if you're not grounded, this will eat you alive. You'll start doing things to impress them, to prove something to them, to gain their approval. But that's a game you'll never win. The bar will always move. What they admire today, they'll mock tomorrow. What they ignore now, they'll envy later. But their attention cannot be your compass. Their opinions cannot be your motivation. Because if you build your identity on the shifting sands of public opinion, your self-worth will rise and fall with every whisper. Focus on yourself. That's not selfish, it's survival. The Stoics knew that to be distracted by the noise of the crowd was to lose control of your own mind. Seneca warned against the influence of the masses. He said it plainly: spend time with those who lift your soul, not those who drain it. And most importantly, learn to be your own company. Because when you depend on others to keep you going, you give them the keys to your inner world. And what happens when they leave, when they stop clapping, when they don't notice your effort? You collapse. Unless you've trained yourself to stand on your own, you are the only constant in your life. Everything else changes. People come and go. Circumstances shift. Markets rise and fall. Emotions fluctuate. But you, your mindset, your principles, your values, those are yours to develop, protect, and refine. That is the Stoic path. It is the road less traveled, the one that doesn't seek shortcuts or applause. It's the discipline of doing the work when nobody's watching. It's the strength to keep going when no one says thank you. It's the wisdom to know that most people are too wrapped up in their own struggles to care about yours. Not because they're cruel, but because that's how life is. And so you must become your own coach, your own cheerleader, your own mentor. You must train your mind to remain steady in praise and in silence. In support and in loneliness, the moment you stop needing others to understand your path is the moment you free yourself to walk it with purpose. You begin to do things because they are right, not because they are popular. You begin to make decisions based on clarity, not fear. You begin to value peace over praise. You begin to act with integrity even when no one is watching. Especially when no one is watching. That's when character is forged. That's when you build the quiet confidence that no one can steal. And it doesn't come from tweets or likes or applause. It comes from keeping promises to yourself. From doing the thing you said you would do. From building discipline like a muscle. Stoicism doesn't teach you to be emotionless. It teaches you to be unshaken. It teaches you to feel deeply, but not be ruled by those feelings. To care deeply, but not be controlled by what others think. To take criticism with grace and praise with humility. To look inward for direction and upward for purpose. This is the mindset that turns struggle into strength, rejection into redirection, pain into power. And it all begins with letting go of the illusion that others are supposed to care more about your journey than you do. They won't. They shouldn't. That's your responsibility, your burden, your gift. When you understand that nobody cares, you stop waiting for permission. You stop asking for opinions before you act. You stop hesitating every time someone questions your direction. You move with conviction, not arrogance, with purpose, not pride. And you measure your progress not by the claps of the crowd, but by the quiet sense of alignment you feel when your actions match your values. This is what separates the Stoic from the scattered, the disciplined from the distracted, the legend from the follower. Focus on yourself, not because others don't matter, but because they are not responsible for your growth. You are. And when you embrace that truth, you step into your power fully, silently, unshakably. Your journey is your own. The struggles you face are preparing you for strength the world may never understand. The sacrifices you make are forging a future the world may never see coming. The battles you fight in silence are building a version of you that even you don't fully comprehend yet. And while others may doubt you, forget you, or overlook you, you will not be moved, because you are not doing this for them. You are doing this for the person you are becoming, and that person is being built every day, not by noise, but by focus. Not by likes, but by discipline. Not by attention, but by action. Focus on yourself. Keep going. Keep growing. Keep building. Let the world catch up later. Nobody cares what time you woke up today, how many hours you slept, or whether you feel tired. Nobody is going to reward you for showing up unless results are produced. The truth that Stoicism makes brutally clear is that you must train yourself to do what is necessary, not because others are watching, but because you are watching. You are accountable to your own soul, your own progress, your own growth. The more you rely on others to care, the more disappointed and distracted you will become. Expecting applause is the beginning of emotional weakness. Waiting to be noticed is a delay in your personal evolution. The only path forward is to build, even if no one is clapping, even if no one is looking, even if no one believes in you. Because Stoic philosophy teaches that the inner fortress is stronger than the outer empire. You can have everything taken from you except your will. There's something freeing about knowing that nobody cares. It relieves the pressure. It removes the noise. You no longer need to impress. You no longer need to be perfect in anyone's eyes. You just need to be real, consistent, disciplined, and focused. What matters is whether you're better than yesterday, not whether someone else thinks you are. Marcus Aurelius said it best when he reminded himself that it is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live. To truly live is to act with intention, regardless of how it is received. Your worth is not determined by a crowd. It is forged in solitude, discipline, and inner alignment. It's tempting to believe that one day someone will finally see all the work you've done and give you the recognition you deserve. But that belief is a trap, a distraction, a weakness, because when you work for praise, you give away your power. When you rely on applause, your motivation becomes external, and when that applause fades, and it always does, so does your will to act. That's why Stoicism demands self-sufficiency. The work must be done because it is right, not because it is recognized. The improvement must be pursued because it is necessary, not because it is admired. You do not become a master of yourself by pleasing others. You become a master by showing up every day and building regardless of who notices. The world does not owe you understanding. It does not owe you comfort. It does not owe you opportunity. It offers nothing but the present moment and the raw material of life, and what you do with it is entirely up to you. You can waste time wishing people saw your pain, or you can use your pain to push through. You can complain that no one appreciates your sacrifices, or you can turn your sacrifices into strength. That's the essence of Stoic power, the ability to take what life gives you and turn it into something useful. To take rejection and build resilience. To take pain and cultivate wisdom. To take solitude and create peace. People are busy with their own lives. They don't have time to notice your struggle. They don't carry your burden. They're not responsible for your transformation. So focus on yourself, not in a selfish way, but in a necessary way. You must become what you were meant to be without waiting for permission, without seeking validation, without asking for support. Because true power comes from doing what must be done when no one is watching. It comes from the silence of early mornings, from the repetition of disciplined routines, from the mental toughness of pushing through even when it would be easier to stop. The Stoic learns not to depend on motivation, but to cultivate discipline. Motivation comes and goes like the wind. One day it carries you forward, the next it disappears. But discipline is internal. It's rooted in your identity. When you no longer care whether people notice your effort, you are free to give your best effort. When you stop comparing yourself to others, you are free to become your highest self. Comparison is the thief of joy, and dependency on others' opinions is the death of growth. You must build a life that is not only lived outwardly, but experienced inwardly. Your peace, your clarity, your energy. All of it begins with the decision to focus on your own path. Seneca once said that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. And so much of our emotional struggle comes from imagining what others think, how they judge us, whether they approve of us. But the Stoic dismisses this illusion. The Stoic returns to what is real: the breath, the step, the task, the moment. He knows that he cannot control what people think, so he does not waste energy trying to manage their perception. Instead, he controls his responses, his habits, his reactions. That is true freedom. To live by principle, not popularity. To live by purpose, not performance. You will be misunderstood. You will be criticized. You will be doubted. But these things cannot stop you unless you let them. And why would you? Their doubt is not your truth. Their misunderstanding is not your responsibility. Their criticism is not your limit. You are not here to convince others. You are here to evolve. That is the Stoic path. Quiet, patient, relentless. While others talk, you train. While others debate, you do. While others wait for conditions to be perfect, you create progress out of chaos. The greatest advantage you will ever have is the ability to be unmoved by noise, to be focused when the world is distracted, to be disciplined when others are impulsive, to be grounded when others are swayed by emotion. That is the edge the Stoic seeks, not through force but through control, not through fame but through excellence. And that excellence is developed in private, no fanfare, no spotlight, no approval, just the work, just the grind, just the daily sharpening of mind, body, and spirit. The ancient Stoics faced exile, illness, betrayal, loss, and even death. But they kept their composure.
Why? Because they knew the truth. Your reaction matters more than your situation. Your mindset determines your outcome. Your attitude writes your destiny. When you accept that nobody owes you attention or comfort, you begin to build from a place of truth.
You stop chasing what is temporary. You stop expecting life to be fair. You start becoming something greater than circumstance. And that is the beginning of personal greatness. You don't need permission to be focused. You don't need applause to be consistent. You don't need praise to be disciplined. You only need the courage to keep going, even in the absence of recognition. You only need the strength to stand up every time you are knocked down. You only need the clarity to walk your own path, even if no one walks with you. Because in the end, the person you become is not determined by the crowd, but by your choices, your effort, and your refusal to quit when it would have been easier to give up. Nobody cares what you're going through, and that is not a reason to feel discouraged. It's the very reason to take complete control of your life. In a world where attention is currency, it is easy to fall into the trap of performing rather than becoming. You start living for other people's approval, structuring your goals around their validation, adjusting your identity to fit their expectations. But the Stoics knew better. They understood that freedom begins the moment you stop expecting the world to care. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet reminded himself each day that he was just a man, subject to pain, time, and death like everyone else. His strength came from his ability to look inward and act rightly, no matter who was watching. He wrote not to be published, not to be admired, but to remind himself that the true battle is always internal. You must stop waiting for applause. You must stop hoping that someone will come along to validate your suffering, your progress, or your potential. Because while you're waiting, life is passing. While you're hoping to be noticed, you're losing time that could be used building something real, something lasting. Nobody cares about your excuses. Nobody owes you understanding. The world responds to results, and those are earned in solitude. In quiet hours when your discipline matters more than your feelings. When your commitment to growth matters more than your need for approval. When your progress is invisible to everyone but yourself. And still, you choose to persist. Epictetus was born a slave, physically crippled. And yet, he became one of the most powerful philosophers in history. Not because people gave him a platform, but because he refused to be defined by his circumstances. He taught that external events are not within our control, only our response to them. You may be born into hardship, ignored by those around you, dismissed by society, but none of that defines your trajectory unless you let it. You are not owed attention. You are not owed praise. What you are owed is the chance to act, to take responsibility, to do the work regardless of whether anyone is looking. There is a brutal kind of freedom in realizing that nobody cares. Because once you accept it, you stop performing. You stop chasing the approval that never really matters. You stop trying to prove your worth to people who are too caught up in their own insecurities to recognize your growth. You begin to focus, truly focus, on what matters. On waking up earlier, eating cleaner, training harder, studying more, building skills, building habits, building a life that cannot be shaken by anyone else's opinion. The less you need from others, the stronger you become. The more silent your work, the louder your results. People will not support you until you no longer need their support. They will ignore your effort, and then one day they'll call you an overnight success. But you'll know the truth. You'll remember the quiet nights, the early mornings, the doubt, the failure, the grind. You'll know that what made you was not the spotlight, but the moments when no one was clapping, and you did it anyway. That's where character is built. That's where strength is earned. That's where you become someone worth becoming. Stop trying to prove something to people who don't matter. Stop comparing your journey to theirs. The Stoics didn't waste time measuring themselves against others. They measured themselves against their own potential, their own values, their own standard of excellence. You are not in competition with the world. You are in competition with who you were yesterday. That is the only race worth running. That is the only opponent worth defeating. The moment you shift your focus from external validation to internal mastery, you begin to live with purpose. You begin to move differently. You become dangerous, not in a violent way, but in a powerful way. Because now your energy cannot be manipulated. Now your path cannot be redirected by petty criticism or shallow praise. Seneca wrote about the importance of time and how we waste it as if it were infinite. And one of the greatest ways we waste time is by caring what others think. You can spend years trying to be liked, trying to be accepted, trying to fit in, and still end up empty. Or you can spend those years building yourself, sharpening your mind, strengthening your body, elevating your spirit. The world does not owe you peace. The world does not owe you success. It only offers the opportunity to claim it, and that opportunity belongs to those who are willing to stop whining and start working when you care less about who is watching. You begin to build without fear. You stop hesitating. You stop overthinking. You act. You move. You execute. Most people are paralyzed by fear of judgment. They'd rather stay average than risk being criticized. But the Stoic understands that judgment is empty. That opinions are reflections of the speaker, not the subject. That fear is conquered through action, not avoidance. So do not shrink yourself to avoid attention. Do not censor your ambition to make others comfortable. Do not lower your standards to fit into small conversations. Focus on yourself, not in selfishness, but in sacred responsibility. You are responsible for your body, your thoughts, your time, your potential. Every moment you waste waiting for someone to believe in you is a moment you could be spending becoming undeniable. Nobody cares how hard your past was. Nobody cares how heavy your pain is. They will care about the results, and by then, your story will speak for itself. Your life is your message. Let the results do the talking. Let your peace speak louder than your need for attention. Let your habits be stronger than your emotion. Let your discipline be the foundation on which your legacy is built. You will face rejection. You will be underestimated. You will be ignored. But that is not failure. That is the process. That is your advantage. Because while others wait for permission, you move. While they talk, you execute. While they doubt, you build. Every setback is an invitation to rise stronger. Every failure is a lesson wrapped in pain. And the Stoic does not avoid pain. He learns from it. He turns wounds into wisdom. He does not react. He responds. He does not complain. He adapts. He does not depend. He strengthens. The silence is your training ground. The loneliness is your sharpening blade. The struggle is your teacher. Embrace them. Let them shape you. Let them refine you. Because one day the results will speak volumes. And when they ask how you did it, you won't need to say a word. You'll remember the hours, the pain, the losses, the nights you cried but kept going. You'll remember that nobody cared, and that it made you unbreakable. You'll remember that you didn't need anyone to tell you to become great. You told yourself, and that voice, your voice, was enough. Always was, always will be.